We are given the following information about stock X, Y, and the market, and the annual effective risk rate is 4%. So I'll just write RF equals 0.04, and we're given the expected return and the volatilities for stock X and Y and the market, and we're given the correlations between the returns of stock X and the market, and the correlation between the returns of stock Y and the market. Okay, we're assuming the capital asset pricing model holds, and we need to calculate the required returns for stock X and Y and determine which of the two stocks an investor should choose. Okay, so we're assuming capital asset model pricing model holds. And capital asset pricing model states that required return of an asset equals risk-free interest rate plus beta of the asset, um, parentheses, expected return of the market minus risk-free interest rate. And we're not given beta of the asset, but we can express beta of an asset as volatility of the asset over volatility of the market times correlations of the asset and the market. And we're given the correlations right here, and we're also given the volatilities of the assets in the market, so we can calculate beta. So, given using this formula, let's calculate the required return of x. Required return of x will be risk-free interest rate plus volatility of x over volatility of the market times correlations of x in the market. And this whole thing equals to beta. Yeah. And then parentheses, expected return of the market minus risk-free rate. Now, we're given all the information, so we just need to plug in the values. Risk-free interest rate is 0.04 plus, and the volatility of the stock X is 0.4, and the volatility of the market is 0.25, and the correlations between stock X and the market is negative 0.25, and the expected return of the market is 0.06, and the risk-free rate is 0.04. And by calculating this, we get 0.032. Okay, now we can calculate the required return of y as well. We're just using the same formula. We're going to use y here, and we're just using the volatility of y and the volatility and the correlations between y and the market. So it would be 0.04 for the risk-free interest rate, and we're going to use the volatility of the stock y, which is 0.35, over the volatility of the market, which is 0.25, times the correlations, which is 0.3, and parentheses, we have the same values for expected return of market and the risk rate. So, and this would yield okay, so this would yield 0.0484. Okay, so let's write required return right next to here. So required return for x is 3.2%, because looking at this value, this would be 3.2%, and this would be 4.84% for Y. Okay, let's compare expected return and the required return. And we can see that for stock X, expected return is larger than required return for X because 5.5 is larger than 3.2. And we need to understand like what, okay, what expected return and what expected return mean and required return mean to determine which stocks to invest in. So required return means that the minimum return that an investor, a minimum return that an investment options to be considered. So, and the expected return would be the return that the investor thinks what the return will be in the future. So, since the expected return for stock X is larger than required return, it should be a good investment because we will be expecting more return than the minimum return. And while looking at Y, the required return is larger and the expected return is smaller, so this should be a bad decision for investment. So, looking at the answer choices, required return for X is 3.2%, so we can cross out C, D, E. And as I mentioned earlier, the investor should choose stock X because the expected return is larger. So the answer is A.